Hi, I'm Brett Ryan from Focus on the Family Australia, and welcome to Talking About Special Needs. Obviously, when you hear the word special needs, there's lots of different words that can be referred to as special needs. It could be additional needs, it could be atypical, differently abled, but for the sake of this presentation, I'm just going to be encapsulating special needs. The chances are, by the percentage of those with additional needs or special needs in the world, it's anywhere between 10 to 15%. And that can encapsulate many different things. Many things like psychological, physical, mental, intellectual and sensory. There could be deafness or it could be blind. Some people are born with special needs and others acquire it. And so, as I said, chances are you either have someone that you know that has special needs, or you know somebody that does. And so hopefully at the end of this presentation, you'll be able to know things to say and things not to say, and how to help you navigate this world to be sensitive and to show great compassion on those with additional needs. As mentioned, there are different ways special needs can present. It could be physical, like muscular dystrophy or multiple sclerosis, but physical also could relate to asthma or diabetes, epilepsy or paraplegia. There's developmental special needs, that's Down syndrome or autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia, auditory processing disorders. And then there's behavioral or emotional, like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or bipolar disorder, or anxiety. And then we have those sensory impaired, visually impaired or hearing impaired. So it can encapsulate so many different areas. And any of these can result in limitations or impairment, some cognitively, some physically, sensorially, or emotionally, or mentally. And so when we talk about special needs, we can't just say, hey, that's the only way someone could present, because not all disabilities can be seen. Many are hidden. So we need to be sensitive to what could present. We might assume something and we don't know all the circumstances. So whether it's in the schools, whether it's in a shopping centre, whether it's in our churches, our communities, wherever it may be, we need to be sensitive and show great compassion and understanding of what may really be going on. So there are a few things not to say when you see something that's obviously a person with an additional needs. This is either to their parents or siblings or someone who is the carer. Things like God only gives you what you can handle, or God only gives special people special children. Or it's amazing how smart they are, being surprised. Or I'm so sorry, and it can sound like pity rather than compassion. Things like they need to learn to control their behaviour. Sometimes they just can't. And we might assume that they can, but they can't control. And so those things aren't very welcome to hear, especially if you're a parent with a child with special needs. They look normal to me is not helpful. And if you tried this therapy, it worked for someone I know. Obviously, as a parent who's got a child with an additional need, they've probably tried different things. They've been well researched, and it doesn't help when you've come in from the outside and say, hey, I know what you should do. That is not helpful. Things like parenting your child must be so hard. I can't imagine how you do it. Well, it is hard work. Parenting is hard work for any parent. And to add another layer, like I couldn't do it, you must be very special. They're doing the best they can, and they don't need to be reminded constantly about their extraordinary service, because this is their child. This is the one they love and cherish. They're not doing anything any other parent wouldn't do in the same circumstances. Things like, you're really amazing to care for a child with special needs. I think all parents are amazing. They don't need to be reminded again. Their child is extraordinary, and because every child is extraordinary. They're all special in God's eyes. Things like, it's too bad you had to put your life on hold. No, that is not helpful at all. In fact, they haven't put their life on hold. They've just extended it. They've done other things. I've met some extraordinary men and women who have done extraordinary things and gone on to do study and achieved great things, holding a great job. But there's also, they don't feel like they're putting their life on hold, because they've just welcomed this child with a new sense of fulfillment. Things like, oh, it's just temporary, right? They'll get better. Not every child will get better, depending on what the circumstances are. And quite often, this is lifelong. So that's not helpful. Things like your child wouldn't have meltdowns if you discipline them. That is not helpful, especially if you've got a child that's throwing tantrums in a public setting, whether it's in a shopping center or in a church or a sporting event. You know, we can assume that we know better, but you don't know what it's like to live with this child 24/7. It's not about discipline, it's about their uniqueness, and they may see the world in a different way. This added to that was like, give me that child for a week and I'll whip them into shape. Well, you wouldn't like to be in their shoes. So things like that aren't helpful, and I'm so lucky my kids are healthy. Yes, you can be, saying that I'm blessed, but to say you're lucky and they're unlucky doesn't help. And sometimes some children, depending on what the circumstances, whether it's a mental health issue or a physical health issue, they may need medicine. And sometimes people can say, well, medicine is for parents that are lazy. That is not helpful at all, because parents are doing the very best they can under the circumstances, and sometimes medicine is helpful. But here are some things that you can say. In fact, the best thing you can do is not say anything and just listen more and ask questions, educate yourself. Can you tell me more about autism spectrum disorder? Can you tell me a little bit more about anxiety? Can you tell me a little bit more about Down syndrome? We need to show great empathy and have an understanding of what is going on with their child, because it's very unique to them. As I said in my opening remarks, a lot of people say, well, aren't all children on the ASD, on the autism spectrum disorder, the same? No. If you meet one child on the ASD, you meet one child. One size does not fit all, and one treatment does not fit all. We've actually been portrayed in the media that every child on the ASD has super intelligence and they can get fixated on one particular thing. But sometimes children on the ASD are non-communicative. They don't have any speech. They may not have the ability to cognitively process things. So you cannot actually assume everyone is the same. So you need to educate yourself. What is unique about your child? Tell me a little bit more about this particular disorder. And this is another thing. If the child's present, don't talk to them as the child isn't there. They've got ears, they've got their mind, they've got their heart, they can see you, and they can process it through their filter. And so don't pretend that they're not there, and don't talk to them like they're deaf either. Sometimes I've seen people, they might have, they're blind, so people talk louder. For whatever reason, I don't know. A child isn't in a wheelchair. It doesn't mean that they have to talk at a higher volume, because they can perfectly hear. But pretend that they're not there is not helpful. They are fully present, so include them in the journey. And so when we talk about showing compassion, it's different from pity. There's a big difference. So learn the difference between that. And some of the greatest words that a parent with a child with special needs is, how can I help? What's something practical? My wife has done that recently to a friend of hers, and who's got 3 children on the ASD. And she's doing a marvelous job, her and her husband. And they're homeschooling their children, and they've got some great supports. But my wife simply said, how can I help? And thinking it might be a meal, or thinking it could be to help do the washing or do some shopping. No, simply this woman said, can I just come and spend some time with you, do life with you, just to have an adult conversation, to be mentored by my wife? And I thought, that is exactly what people need to hear. We don't assume that they need certain things. Ask the question, and you might be surprised what they might say. Things you can say continually is simply say hello. I often would see someone in a wheelchair or someone with a disability, and I probably am more comfortable, but I think everyone should do this, is not just stare at them, because that's not polite, it's not courteous, but simply going up to them and saying, hello, how are you? Now, they may not be able to respond depending on if their speech is impaired or their cognitive processes, but simply acknowledging them that they are there and they matter. They are of a high value. And for the parent or the caregiver, for them, they're actually saying, hey, someone notices my child. Someone cares for my child. They matter to them. And that can be something that is so precious to them. Quite often when I see a child, particularly a younger child, or even an older person in a wheelchair, I might comment on it and say, hey, I love your wheels. Or sometimes children who are sensitive to loud noises, I might comment upon their headphones. Hey, there's some those noise cancelling headphones, they're very cool. Or someone with glasses, oh, they are very funky. And it just breaks the ice. And it's amazing how those simple words can make all the difference. Just acknowledging them and to say, hey, you're pretty cool, you're funky. And you should see the face of a child that's got glasses, and depending on what type of glasses they are, sometimes they can be quite thick or they might be quite prominent. You know, to acknowledge them, they're going to say, because they might have been feeling self-conscious about their wheelchair or self-conscious about their headphones or self-conscious about their glasses, and you're acknowledging them and saying it's funky, well, it just makes their day. I was a former children's pastor, and one of the things that we made a high priority, a high value in our ministry is to include those children in our ministry. And that was the question we'd ask. How can we include them? What's unique about them? How can we help you? So allow them to come and enjoy the activities, enjoy the learning, enjoy the fun, the laughter, the songs, the teaching. How can we include them? And that's the same thing you can do with a child that may be going to your schools, your child's school. You know, how can they be invited to be included to make them feel like they matter? I often commented about not so much their looks, because sometimes their looks could be quite different. So I might comment on their character. Oh, your child's really smart, or they're really funny. Oh, they look so happy. They've got a great smile. You know, those little things can actually make them feel really important. But for the caregiver or the parent, it just makes their day. And often at the end of an opportunity that I've interacted with somebody, whether it's in the shopping centre or at a sporting event or walking down the street or whatever it is, I would actually say, hey, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you or allowing me the opportunity to be with you today. Those little things can make all the difference. Often people say, well, if God was so loving, why do these things occur? I wish I was able to give you the answer. I wish I was able to say the why. And we on this side of eternity may never be able to give that why or explain what is going on with a child, and for the family for that matter, who have to, it's not just for a short period of time, this is a lifelong appointment, that they've got this particular disability or this particular need that's going to be ongoing. But I often refer to, I can see God's perfection in the imperfection. There's so much that we could learn and so much we could glean from allowing them to be part of our community, to be part of our lives, to show them that we care, but they can show us their love and compassion. I have seen children with special needs show extraordinary compassion, show extraordinary love and understanding. And I've also seen siblings of children with special needs show that understanding that is not possible unless they've experienced them and seen firsthand of how much their mum and dad have loved their brother or sister, and they become an advocate. Focus on the Family Australia is a faith-based organisation, and we often use the Bible to illustrate things that will help us live our life to its full. And there's a great verse in Luke chapter 14, and it describes a story of a man inviting friends and family, people of influence, people who had a position of authority, and he was inviting them to this huge banquet, and they didn't even RSVP, they didn't even respond, they didn't even turn up. And in Luke 14, verses 12 to 14, it said, "Then Jesus said to the man who had invited him, 'When you give a dinner or a banquet, don't invite your friends or family and relatives and rich neighbors. If you do, they'll invite you in return, and you'll be paid back When you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. They cannot pay you back, but God will bless you and reward you. Here is illustrating that we should invite the marginalized, those who are on the outside, those who look a bit different, who act a bit differently, who think a little bit differently, and invite them because they may not be able to pay you back, but I can tell you this, they certainly can pay you back. There is so much that we could glean from them, so much we can learn from them, how we do life and how we see the world through a different lens, and it'll help us be the very best version of ourselves. I personally cannot imagine what it would be like to have a child with special needs. But there was a woman by the name of Emily Pearl Kingsley, and she had discovered that her child was on the autism spectrum. And she wrote this essay or a short poem called Welcome to Holland. And I'd like to take a moment just to read this out to you. And it reads this: when you're going to have a baby, it's like you're planning a vacation to Italy. You're all excited, you get a whole bunch of guidebooks, you learn a few phrases so you can get around, and then it comes time to pack your bags and head to the airport. Only when you land, the stewardess says, "Welcome to Holland." You look at one another in disbelief and shock and say, "Holland? What are you talking about? I signed up for Italy." But they explain that there's been a change of plan, that you've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. "But I don't know anything about Holland," you say. I don't want to stay. But stay you do. You go out and buy some new guidebooks. You learn some new phrases, and you meet people you never knew existed. The important thing is that you are not in a bad place filled with despair. You're simply in a different place than you had planned. It's a slower place than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a little while, you have a chance to catch your breath and begin to discover that Holland has windmills, Holland has tulips, Holland has Rembrandts. But everyone else you know is busy coming and going from Italy. They're all bragging about what a great time they've had there. And for the rest of your life, you'll say, "Yes, that's what I had planned." The pain of that will never go away. You have to accept that pain because of the loss of that dream, the loss of that plan, is a very, very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to go to Italy, you'll never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. The first time I read that, I cried because I can imagine what it would have been like for a parent to experience that. The pain, the expectations, that grief, that loss. But as they navigated this journey, they got to meet some wonderful people, extraordinary people that they would have never have imagined. And they got to see the beauty, the wonder, the joy of seeing those small little milestones, the wins. It may never be like Italy, but it certainly has some blessings, some joy, some moments of sheer ecstasy amongst the heartache, amongst the sadness and the grief that they must experience. But what I'm really trying to say is that even though you or someone that you know has experienced this, and maybe you will never actually understand or fully comprehend what they're going through, they need our understanding. They need our love, they need our compassion, they need someone to come alongside them to show them that they do matter, that you do care, that you do love them and you want to support them. So reach out and be able to help those who may have a child with a special need or a special extraordinary thing that has occurred to them that has impaired their functionality physically, emotionally, psychologically. Whatever it may be, you and I could show God's love to everyone that you come across with. I hope that the things that I've shared with you today will help you to be more alert or more understanding or more sensitive to the things that you should say and the things that you shouldn't say. Simply, you've got to treat the child as an individual, not the disability. And especially the family that surrounds them, the caregivers, the parents, the siblings, they matter too. And we need to show them great compassion and great understanding. Because if you imagine they're living with this child or this adult and they do grow older, it's a lot harder and a lot, more heavy work and more heavy demands as they get older. And this is not just for a short term, this is lifelong. And so they need all the help and support and encouragement and love and compassion that we can give. And I'll leave you with this story. It's a story that I experienced myself. And I'm not trying to put glory on myself, but it was something simple that I did to a child who obviously had cerebral palsy and was in a wheelchair. And we were in a store when our children were young, and my wife was shopping for the boys, and she was in a wheelchair, just sitting there, and I just started having a conversation with her. She had a pretty dress on. She couldn't communicate. She had a lovely smile as best she could, and I just started talking to her, and I said, I commented on her dress, I commented on her hair. She had a hair clip on, and her father was just in earshot, and I just kept on having this conversation with her. And at the end of it, I did what I mentioned before. I just thanked him for the privilege of allowing me to talk with your daughter. She's got a beautiful smile. You must be very proud. And as he turned the wheelchair around, he started crying. Now, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, and I was a bit confused. Why was he crying? I said this to my wife, and my wife said, it's because you treated his daughter like any other daughter, that she mattered. And she matters to me, and she should matter to you, but he matters, and we all matter to God. For God so loved the whole world that he gave his only begotten Son. That means everyone. And we need to show great compassion and love to all and sundry. May you be blessed by what I shared today, and look out for those along the highways and the byways that may look a little bit different, act a little bit different, think a little bit differently, but they matter to God. God bless.